in progress.
Hey guys, this is Camford15 back at it with another video for you guys. And I'm back with the Grand Magic Games arc part 2. Fun fact, if you guys want to know anything, any background information, I'm making this literally, I believe, 2 days after I did my part 1 video. That's how quick I finished this arc. One, because I love it, and then two, I want to make sure I get these videos, record these videos out fast enough so, you know, by the time they go up to YouTube, hey, they're already done and edited and stuff like that, which is very little editing to do of anything. But yes, we are back with the Grand Magic Games arc, the second half of the Grand Magic Games arc, where we talk about everything going on from the aftermath of the Natsu versus Gajul and the Natsu and Gajul versus Sting and Rogue fight to literally the end of this arc, which moves on to, in the manga's case, the Tartarus arc, or in the anime's case, the Eclipse Celestial Spirits arc. Don't worry. Thank God. Because next arc review, I'm actually gonna be talking about the movie first before I get to that arc. I know. I can't wait. Anyways, the Grand Magic Games arc, back half, like I said, is the part where the story literally picks up and we get thrust into the end of the world situation, which essentially becomes one of the best climaxes to arc I've seen in any anime, period. Like, to go from a tournament setting to a legit end of the world type of situation where you have to go against these damn creatures that nobody can actually do damage to. Just crazy stuff. So yeah, and this is the part where, like, it gets me into. Now, again, like I said, the first half of the Grand Magic Games I loved, and that was like all build up and everything. And I feel like the second half is where everything's essentially paid off. Fairy Tail winning the games paid off because they built it up over and over and over in the first half of the arc. You know, the buildup of this, you know, apocalyptic type of event happening, you know, that's paid off here. The whole Dragon King Festival paid off here and stuff like that. Definitely feel like the second half of the Grand Magic Games arc is a payoff. And I'll say at the end of this video, I feel as a whole, both parts come together and support each other in a great way to where it makes this arc at least the second best arc in Fairy Tail. In an unbiased way, Grand Magic Games arc is the second best arc in Fairy Tail. Now, so anyways, like I said, mentioned, the Grand Magic Games arcs cover a total of manga chapters 258 to 340, and anime episodes 150 to anime episode 203. So the chapters and episodes for this portion of the arc that I'm going to be covering is in the manga. The video I'm talking about, the chapters that are covered in the video here today are chapters 300 to 340, and the anime episodes are 176 to 203, with the last few episodes in that whole portion at the end near like the 200, like 202, 203, they're mostly filler. Like, they cut a little bit into canonical, you know, after epilogue stuff of the Grand Magic Games, but that really is filler that leads you to the Eclipse Celestial Spirits arc. But yeah, now an interesting tidbit, if you didn't know, is the fact that for this portion of the anime, especially when you're watching it for the anime for the first time, you see the whole standpoint of that the animation has changed, the colors are different, everything about it's changed. Well, the reason is because, well, guess what? They changed studios, and the animation-wise, still had A1 Pictures as they were doing. But the studio also had this other studio. I forgot what the studio was called. But there was this other studio that did the animation and differently. Essentially, the colors are definitely toned out a bit more. They're not as bright and vibrant. And then the, you know, animation is definitely different. And when I heard the animation was more to make the characters look like their manga counterparts. Now, I heard a lot of people weren't fans of this type of style of animation. Personally, I'm fine with it because really, with the dark tone of color, it shows that, well, guess what? This is going to be darker. And with the back half of the Grand Magic Games arc and even the Tartaros arc, they are probably the two darkest arcs, taking a more darker tone in the series. So I think them fading out colors and making things more grim and black and white, and I guess if you want to say where the colors are just not as vibrant as they used to be, makes sense for arcs that are a darker tone. So I think that the change was much needed, and I honestly like the change. And stuff like that. So yeah, and another thing is after the first half of the Grand Magic Games, where they leave you off in that to be continued screen, the next half of the Grand Magic Games, literally does not come back. Fairy Tail does not come back for a whole year. So if you were watching this as it was coming out, you had to wait a whole year to see the second half of the Grand Magic Games. If I was watching this, I would have been pissed. And funny enough, the original release date of the original, when the original Fairy Tail started, was July 12th, 2009. And by the time, guess what? It finally ended. Essentially, the original run was ended on March 30th, 2013. And then they had to wait a whole year from March on till 2014 for the anime to finally come back. So yeah. Anyways, let's get on with this arc review because I've talked a lot of background information. Anyways, after the aftermath with the battle of Fairy Tail's battle with Sabretooth against the Twin Dragons, Genma essentially is disappointed and pissed off that Sting and Rogue essentially got their asses kicked in this fight. And essentially he's trying to punish them and even eventually trying to force them on the guild. Eventually Lecter comes up to him and saying yo, master, listen, look, Sting tried his best. That's the one thing, you need to take out of this. He's tried his best and he'll get these guys the next day or in the next games. But Genma sees as disrespect that a cat has the guild emblem, and he apparently kills Lecter. It pisses off Sting so much that he literally blows a whole hole through his chest and takes down Genma. Now, I heard in the manga they quickly pick up this scene, quickly get the aftermath of the scene. I'll bring the scene up later. Now, Gaj, after coming back from the mine card and stuff like that, he tells Natsu and Wendy to follow him. So they go to this dragon grave. So he takes them to the dragon graveyard he saw underground, and they're all wondering why the hell these dragon bones are here and stuff like that. Now, Wendy, using her Milky Way spell she learned, calls upon the spirit of Zirconis, the Jade Dragon. And he goes on to tell a story that 400 years ago, dragons lived in a world where they lived in it and they ruled over it. They saw humans essentially as measly ants to them. Now, at one point in this, all those years ago, there was one dragon that was against the lifestyle of essentially having humans be their food. And he thought dragons should live and share their knowledge with the humans and stuff like that. And he had some dragon followers that got behind him. But Zirconis says there were also some dragons that were against that ideal, and it turned out into becoming a massive dragon civil war. And even Zirconis says, I was one of those dragons that were against that guy about it. Personally, I'm not fans of humans. Essentially, because of this, the dragons eventually taught the humans dragon slaying magic. And because of that, they gave that side the edge in the war against dragons. And after that, and Zirconis essentially brings up the point, is yeah, that's all good and well and everything for those people, but eventually those humans got so self-centered with their dragon slaying magic, and they actually turned on the dragons that even taught them their magic. So again, it kind of makes sense to why dragons really ain't buddies with humans and stuff like that. So yeah. Now there was this one. Now Zirconis brings up this. There was this one individual who learned dragon slaying magic, and it was his personal mission to become the king of all the dragons. He was once a human, but because he used too much dragon slaying magic, he turned himself only into a dragon after killing all these dragons and essentially bathing in their blood, and everything. Which again, like I said, I'm telling you, it's definitely darker because there's like moments in this part of the story where you have like characters like saying, like, for one, bathing in blood. Like, god dang, the old series didn't even make a mention. Yes, they didn't say dark terms like that. You have obviously the Wolf Knights eventually say like, oh, we're gonna kill you and you're going to enjoy it and you're gonna just writhe in your own blood. I'm like, these guys are talking some crazy dark stuff. So people who aren't down with the whole dark change, hey, it's definitely needed because they talking like we're dead here. Hell, it's even more violent with this whole change because with the change, you actually see more blood in this than you ever did in the first half of than in the first part of the fairy tale, and stuff like that with this whole animation change and everything. So, anyways, cutting back to the story, Zirconis said that person who transformed, that human who transformed into a dragon, that was the dragon Acnologia. And obviously the fairy tale members were like, oh, so the dragon we almost died to 7 years ago. Wonderful. And this is where it starts the whole seeds planting of the Acnologia story, and things like that, which the build up to Acnologia, I like it. I kind of, in a way, just don't like how they kind of pay it off, I guess you can say, because I feel like the way when they pay it off, it's kind of rushed. So yeah, but I will say this with Acnologia. I believe since they even called this whole thing the Dragon King Festival, when the dragons finally came from the past, I was also wondering, like, Acnologia would probably have been a character that if I was doing this arc, I would have brought back to try to take down the dragons and stuff like that, because he sees himself as the Dragon King. Now, how they would have executed that or where he would get away eventually, who knows? But I personally have always thought, now thinking about it more, that Acnologia should have appeared in this arc as well, like the Tartaros arc, but you know, look, it is what it is. You can't have it how you want it. I personally would have did that, and stuff like that. So yeah, but yeah. Now Zirconis ends up disappearing after that statement because obviously his spirit force is gone. Eventually, we see Arcadios and Yukino, who listen to the story, to say like, well, that matches up with what we were told as well. And essentially, he asks Fairy Tale if they heard about the Book of Zareth, and essentially he says that Acnologia had help from Zareth to become who he is today. And he says, listen, with this plan, he wants to kill Zareth, which can lead to the stoppage of Acnologia. Now we cover Jalal, and we see after Jalal talks to the hooded girl, he essentially tells Ultra and Merity that essentially they're on the course of destruction. And throughout this arc, they really don't believe if obviously that hooded character is telling the truth, and stuff like that. Also, we see that hooded girl actually runs away from a guard, but drops her notepad that the guard picks up and says the Eclipse plan and the Dragon King Festival will take place on July 7th. So eventually we cut back to obviously our main cast members. Arcadios actually introducing himself and say that they need Lucy's help. And then they go to the castle. Now, this is when Arcadios apologizes for what happened, and he's talking about the people that captured Wendy, Proleuska, and Carla by mistake. They were really trying to capture Lucy and stuff like that. Now, he goes on to say that the Grand Magic Games is actually a cover-up for the kingdom to siphon the competitor's magic power, so then they can use it to power up the Eclipse Gate, which we see here. And essentially, this is the plan, the Eclipse plan. Essentially, their whole plan is to use the 12 Zodiac keys to open the gate to go back in time to 400 years ago before Zeref gained his immortality and his major power and kill him, so then that can in turn stop Acnologia and everything from ever being created and ever being happening and stuff like that. Now, he says he wants Lucy to help them on July 7th, which, funny enough, is the same day as the dragon's going away, because the dragon's going away happened on July 7th. But then Darton with the Royal Guard shows up, and they're saying, and essentially says that Arcadius has committed treason for showing the outside people, kingdom secrets, and stuff like that. So he not only arrests Arcadius, but arrests Yukino and Lucy because they're somehow involved in it when they really never were. Makes no absolute sense. I never really understood. Now, I can understand in Arcadius being arrested. I never understood why Yukino and Lucy had to get arrested for this, because they didn't do anything. Like, he's just showing them the thing, but I'm guessing just the secret plans and stuff like that. But eventually he kicks Fairy Tail out. He's like, listen, if you want to save your friend, win the Grand Magic Games tomorrow, and maybe you can have an audience with the king, so then you can tell them to free your friend and stuff like that. So that's what they go. So eventually, Natsu and the others go back to the hotel. They tell Makarov and everything, that whole thing. Now we cut over back to the prison where Yukino is with Lucy, and Yukino tells Lucy the reason why she's down with the Eclipse plan is because in the past, she lived with a family and her sister named Sorano, but when a Zeref cult attacked her village, her parents were killed and her sister was taken away. And the reason why she wants to do this is so she can have that life again and at least be with her older sister. Now, I wonder who her older sister could be, because they hide it in the anime. And I believe in my last part, I made a mention of the fact that Yukino, when I first saw her, I'm like, she looks like she's Angel's sister or something. Now, I'm not going to spoil it for really arcs until it's later revealed in an arc in the following arcs later. But at this time, if you're not stupid, you would probably see and understand who, her sister is, especially with what we've seen of Angel, and especially by the fact that, a Zeref cult attacked her village and took her sister away by chance. I wonder who that could be. So yeah. And Lucy obviously is like, I understand why you want to do this. So we have Yukino's reasoning to why she's down to do the Eclipse Gate, because obviously this whole thing messed up her lifestyle and everything. So anyways, it's July 6th, and it's the final day of the Grand Magic Games. And essentially it's a team battle where every member on each individual guild team essentially is fighting. And when we see Team Fairy Tail, there's a change in their lineup, and that's the fact that Juvia is actually replaced Natsu. Now, most of the Kingdom people, especially Jordan, thinks, he must have, has Magic Weekend. And I forgot to say, when you get near the Eclipse Gate, because Natsu tries to fight the guards up, but the Eclipse Gate absorbs the magic power right then and there and severely weakens you. And Darden's like, I'm guessing his energy being siphoned from the Eclipse Gate must have affected him. And because of this, eventually it makes it to where now Makarov made the whole plan of making a two-team front. There's going to be, while the games are going on and everybody's focused on the Grand Magic Games, Natsu's group with Natsu, Mira Jane, Wendy, Carla, Happy, and Lily all go to storm the castle to go save Lucy. And I really do like this. It makes it even cooler and everything. Now, in terms of the Grand Magic Games, like I said, the games being held here is essentially a battle royale. Essentially, the whole thing is, if you knock out a teammate, if you knock out an opposing team member of another guild, you're awarded 1 point. If you knock out the team leader, you get 5 points. The winner with the most points is the winner of the Grand Magic Games, essentially. So essentially, when the games are going on, everybody else is starting off fighting and everything, while Fairy Tail is just standing still and closing their eyes and just kind of just standing still and just not doing anything. That's when we find out Mavis gave Fairy Tail a plan to essentially, well, be able to combat this whole thing, because Mavis is known as the fairy tactician, which she's known for her very high strategic knowledge in wars and stuff like that. So eventually Fairy Tail moves off the orders of Mavis, and essentially most of the things are going their way, because everywhere Mavis said, go here, you're going to run into somebody and it's going to be easy W. And it's cool. Now, Rufus actually tries to attack them all, but they all end up dodging. All the other members except Loxus dodge because Loxus has lightning element and he can easily absorb it. Now she also makes mention. Now, the thing about what I do like about Mavis is she isn't 100% spot on her predictions, because she even makes a mention about Jura. He's like, oh yeah, Jura, he's going to be a tough guy. So I don't know how that's going to go. And even she makes a mention when Gray fights Rufus, like, in the cards, that's not an ideal matchup Gray should have. But I'll believe in Gray. Now, we cut over to Princess Hisui, and she brings up the fact that of getting the Eclipse plan number 2 ready, essentially, which is kind of the Eclipse backup plan. When Natsu finally gets into the castle through their funny ways, they find Lucy, but then they fall into a trap set by Princess Hisui. Now, a video of Princess Hisui shows up and says that that the area that they're in is called the Abyss Palace, where criminals essentially go there to rot. She accuses them of being thieves and tells them that they can rot in the underground. But the one thing after telling this whole message is Hisui looks like she's completely unsure of what she's doing and stuff like that. Now, again, like I mentioned earlier, Gray looks to exact his revenge on Rufus, because we get a flashback to where Gray wanted to take on Rufus because Rufus is actually very important to Sabretooth, because Rufus can tell where everyone is on the battlefield and stuff like that. And Gray and Mavis is like, I don't know if you can beat him and stuff like that. And essentially Gray's like, with my feelings, I can do it alone. You just can believe it hard enough. And essentially, Gray throughout this battle is getting his ass kicked thanks to obviously Rufus's his memory make magic, where essentially he can see an attack or read something of a spell and then redo it and just remember it, and is able to do it and everything. So that's the whole thing. Eventually what happens is, in the climax of the fight, Gray essentially creates an attack where Rufus can't memorize the attack spot on, and eventually he manages to do it to where Rufus uses a fire attack on him, but it creates Gray with enough of an opening to be able to use Ice Make Bringer on him and takes out Rufus, and obviously Fairy Tail defeats a Sabretooth member, and Gray gets his revenge. Now, Minerva and the rest of Sabretooth isn't really worried, because they're like, oh, don't worry about that. Our main dude who's going to get us the win is going to be Sting, and everything. And at this time, we get essentially flashback to the events after Sting, blew a hole in Gemma's chest. Essentially, when Minerva says, "Good job, Sting. You clearly are definitely stronger than my father now. And now you have a reneged passion to fight for your friend Lecter." And essentially, we find out Minerva saved Lecter, but she won't give Lecter back to Sting because Minerva's like, win the Grand Magic Games for Sabretooth, and I'll give you your cat friend back. And she's saying, like, because of this, now you have this new determination to fight. Now you have Sting to fight for and everything. So it was her way of it was kind of her way of manipulating Sting to fight for Sabretooth and win, because she knows, like, oh, Sting's going to fight for Lecter no matter what. And he's going to want him back. Again, showing the evil tendencies of Sabretooth and everything. And stuff like that. So, yeah, now, Mavis and Makara, they make mentions over and over this arc how worried they kind of are about Natsu and his gang. So, yeah, now, one, Yukino tells Natsu that she thinks Natsu for fighting for her honor about storming the Sabretooth Guild and everything and showing them up and everything. So she felt good. Now, Natsu and Wendy, they smell something new scent, and they see that it's a beaten down Arcadios there. And then that's when they are essentially attacked by the Royal Guard assassins called the Hungry Wolf Knights, which essentially they're assassins, and they were sent by the princess to kill them. And stuff like that. And we, again, like I said, cutting back to the princess, she doesn't like the fact that she left Arcadios down there and everything. Now, Natsu and Wendy try to fight together, and they fight Kamika, who uses paper magic, which can change the different element based on the color she's using. We have this girl named Cosmos who can use plant-based magic, which honestly pretty ruthless, and stuff like that. So yeah. Anyways, what happens is eventually it gets to the point where it looks like they all get separated at one point in this whole battle, and it ends up becoming singular battles, which I think these battles are pretty cool and pretty fun to watch. And at the same time, these damn freaking Wolf Knights, I said it earlier, but these dudes are talking some dark stuff. Like, they're like, you're gonna bathe in your own blood and you're gonna pay for it. Like Cosmos, a plant girl, she's hot too. But which is funny because later, after they return later on in the arc, I love it to where Loki actually starts hitting on Cosmos, and Cosmos is like, "Get the hell away to me! Get the hell away from me! I don't like men like you." Which again leads me to believe that Eric Bale was definitely chosen as Sanji from his lines as Loki when it comes to trying to be a ladies' man. So yeah. But as I was saying, they're talking some dark stuff here. They're like, you're gonna bathe in your own blood and you're gonna pay for it and stuff like that. Cosmos is the one that says like probably the darkest shit out of all of them. Well, the one crazy looking dude is like, I leave nobody with their bones intact. And I'm like, oh, what? Are you guys talking some mortal stuff? Type of, some gory? They talk gory. Like, they're like legit dudes out for blood. And stuff like that. But they end up all getting split up. Natsu ends up fighting Kama, who uses two different scythes and everything. It's kind of a badass weapon, to be honest. Wendy ends up fighting the plant lady Cosmos. And you get kind of funny stuff where Wendy, I love the one part of their fight where she brings up obviously these sour like plants, and Wendy, we know, doesn't like sour things. She's like, oh my goodness, I really, really love sour stuff. And Cosmos is like, oh, you do? I hope you love it. And obviously Wendy can't handle it, and stuff like that, which I thought was hilarious. Mary Jane ends up fighting Kamika. Lucy and Yukino ends up fighting Yuosuke, and Lily ends up fighting Neppa. Now, literally in order to save Yukino and Lucy, who are about to like literally fall into lava, Arcadios literally walks through lava and well, it's saved by Horologium. Man, I can't say that word. From the standpoint of, they call upon him and the spirits are back. Loki managed to grab the spirits and everything and give them back to Lucy and Yukino. And essentially, Usuke can change like the landscape and everything to his terrain to give him the advantage and everything and stuff like that. In this fight, we see like, Yukino bring out Pieces, and we find out that they actually have human forms alongside their fish forms and stuff like that. So yeah, Natsu's in a fight with Kama, and Kama's like, you committed various sins, and I'm going to make sure you're taken out and everything. And it's funny because he does this one attack where it shows all the sins Natsu caused, and he's like, Natsu's like, wait, so me destroying towns, just trying to do the good thing and stop evil people, that's considered a sin? And Kama's like, yeah, pretty much. And Natsu's like, what the hell, man? So yeah, that was all funny and everything, and stuff like that. Now, in the fight against Kamika, essentially, Mary Jane is affected by most of her attacks. And Kamika uses this one green paper magic that does poison, but Mary Jane uses her Satan Soul, and she literally eats the poison like she's a dragon slayer herself. And she's like, "Oh, I love this," and she knocks out Kamika. Eventually, everybody gets a chance to knock out their own individual person they fight, and eventually, what is it? Eventually they destroy them and beat them. They end up all getting to this door after walking a little bit further, and we see the hooded girl show up and open the door. Now, in the meantime, Darden went back to the castle and spoke with Hisui. And we find out that Hisui was actually working with Arcadios this entire time. So one of my many questions is this. Doesn't Hisui, since she's a princess, have the authority to, I don't know, overpower anything Darton says? Why did she, and the thing is, why did she even do this in the first place? She could have called off all her men, but she's too busy watching the Grand Magic Games. I guess you can say that's a nitpick of mine. I'm not overly mad about, that point, but it's like, when I was watching this arc, I was like, why doesn't Hisui just call them off and say, listen, just bring them to my room and we can talk this thing out and stuff like that. So no idea there. Eventually she tells Darden, like, look, she has a backup plan. If it fit, I'm like, she has a backup plan to this whole event that she was foretold. And she says, if that fails, then Fiore is going to fall. Now, we come back to, obviously, the Grand Magic Games content. Juve starts her fight with Shelia. Urza was actually supposed to fight Minerva, but then Kagura attacks and gets in the way. They have a quick little fight, but then Minerva gets involved. Essentially, you get a literal triple threat match with Minerva, Urza, and Kagura, who essentially are practically all on even terms and everything. Eventually, Minerva's like, okay, let's all stop this nonsense. How about this? Maybe it's time for me to get my drink. So Minerva's like, okay, how about this? Let's stop this fighting. And I think one of you two should fight each other to earn the respect to fight me, because that's how you should earn your right to fight a queen, right? And we see that Minerva actually captured Miliana, and it triggers both Urza and Kagura. Kagura goes in for an attack, but Minerva does the old bait and switch and has Urza replace her place, and it forces Urza to fight Kagura and everything. Now, cutting back to Hisui tells Darden that the events of what she was told is the fact that tells the Darden the events that she was told. Darden's like, we need to cancel the games then. We can't have this happening. And because we need to make people evacuate and stuff like that. But Hisui's like, no, we can't do that, because by the person she was told this information, she said the fact that the winner of the Grand Magic Games is going to win in a way that no one expects and no one sees coming. And it's a win that literally catches everybody by surprise. And she says, if that happens, I'm opening the gate. So we come over to the hooded figure with Natsu's group, and the hooded figure reveals that she is Lucy from the future, and she goes on to say the Kingdom of Fiore is doomed. Now, future Lucy says she came to the past using the Eclipse Gate, and that's when Hisui starts saying, like, I at least got started on the Eclipse Gate being open by using the 12 Zodiac keys. Now, again, cutting back to the Minerva fight, or cutting back to the Kagura versus Urza fight, you have it to where essentially it's a full-out brawl where Urza's like, hey, let's stop doing this. We got to help Miliana. And Kagura's like, you need to stay out of my way. That's none of your business. And you get to the point where this fight is amazing, where Kagura shows off her strength, and she's literally cutting through damn near every armor Urza has. Eventually, Urza asks Kagura why she wants to kill Jalal so bad. And we find out that Kagura was Simon's little sister, which is a revelation. And we find out in the past, Urza actually, and essentially Kagura is very pissed off about this, and Urza's like, listen, if there's anybody you need to kill, it's my fault. I saw Simon die. So she draws her sword. She opens her sword, and everybody's, it mostly members of Fairy Tail, they're like, I can feel the bloodlust coming off her. So it looks like she's going to try to kill Urza, but Urza blocks, and she's like, no, I can't die. Not here, not now. So I'm fighting, obviously, for my friends and everybody in Fairy Tail. So they get into more fight. Urza goes into that one where her only cloth armor form, and she ends up defeating Kagura, but she saves Kagura from falling rubble. But the problem is she gets her leg caught by the rubble and ends up breaking her ankle. Now Loxus starts to fight Olga, who is what we find out is a lightning god slayer, and Gajul starts his fight with Rogue again. So Rogue versus Gajul. Now I totally forgot that Olga Olga was a lightning god slayer. I totally forgot that. Which again, that only makes it to where we have only seen like 3 god slayers. After that, we kind of don't see anymore, but yeah. Anyways, coming back to the Urza and Kagura stuff, Urza tells Kagura that she saved her back in the village because they lived in the same village, saved her from the cult members that were about to take them to the Tower of Heaven, and hid her away. And essentially after that, Kagura, remembers all this, and she says, well, I came across Miliana, and she told me that Jalal killed my brother and everything. Essentially, after Kagura heals us, she's like, I just need some time to think, but here, I'll give you my W, and she's about to submit and give Fairy Tail the W. But Minerva, like the backstabbing bitch she is, stabs Kagura in the back, and also reveals that she beat up Miliana during her time of watching the fight, because she's like, oh, I was really bored watching you guys, so I needed to find myself to entertain myself. And we see that clearly she tortured Miliana, and this literally makes you hate Minerva much more with a passion than you first did when she, tortured Lucy. And that's when Minerva's battle with Urza starts. Now in the fight with Olga and Loxus, Jura gets involved, and Juvia and Shelly, and then Juvia and Shelly's battle, Leon and Grace show up, and stuff like that. Now, in the future, after walking some bit, and they're in like this castle area in the castle, future Lucy tells the others, listen, what happened is, when we were trying to escape, we got caught by the royal guard, and we stay in prison until the tragedy happens. And then I was asking, like, how do we get caught again? And essentially, future Lucy's like, well, we got too close to the Eclipse Gate, and it absorbed and it siphoned our power, it made us weaker, and we got caught, and stuff like that. And essentially, this is when we get the revelation of what the future is going to look like. And essentially, he says in the future, the person that told her came from the future, and we're led to believe that this is future Lucy. And he says that in the future is just a complete apocalypse where 10,000 dragons come and destroy everything. And essentially, and when we come over to future Lucy says, I was still in the castle when that attack happened, and when I finally reawoke from it, I just saw all hell on loose and stuff like that. And the thing is, she said she came back to the past using the Eclipse Gate that took her back in time on July 4th. Arceus essentially hears the story, and he's like, that's everything, the princess was told and everything, and stuff like that. Now, Hisui says their backup plan is to use Eclipse 2 because they stored enough matter to be able to open the gate that way. Now, in the fight against Gajul and Rogue, Gajul utterly defeats Rogue with utter ease. So again, if you still are against the fact that Natsu was superiorly stronger than Sting and Rogue in the tag battle, Gajul easily defeats Rogue with no problem. Now, this is Rogue before he gets possessed. Easily defeats Rogue. Goes to show you that, again, like I mentioned in last week's video, that Gajul and Natsu were literally holding back their true power, and they were stronger than they already looked like. Here's another point in evidence. Gajul utterly defeats Rogue and beats him in like 2 minutes. Anyways, this is when Rogue kind of gives out his heart. And he's like, look, I looked up to you, man. I looked up about what you did in Grimoire Hearts and everything, and saw what you did for Fairy Tail. And I heard that Grimoire Hearts went to war against Fairy Tail. And then when I found out that, Grimoire Hearts was disbanded, because we found out that Rogue wanted to be in Grimoire Hearts, he said, like, when Gaja went to Fairy Tail, he was disappointed in that and stuff like that. But Rogue is like, but I think I understand the reason why you went there and why you lost, because your guild has the bonds of friendship. Because at this point in time, we see Rogue, after seeing all the hell on Sabretooth going on, he's realizing that their bonds, the friends they make in their guild, that's what makes them stronger, and stuff like that. Now, Gaja tells him it's BS, because he's like, look, you have a friend, your Exceed partner, and stuff like that. Now, he gets up, and essentially it looks like Rogue is finally going to admit defeat and stuff like that. But eventually we see the shadow of Rogue essentially tell him to kill Gaja, and then eventually possesses Rogue, and Rogue starts going after Natsu. Eventually Natsu's group gets attacked by the Royal Guard. Arcados and Yukino aren't there. Mary Jane goes to retrieve Yukino and find her. Now Gaja, in his fight against Rogue, who's been possessed and more powered up, is having a tough time. But eventually he gives a cool line where he's like, if Natsu can do it, I can do it too. Or if Salamander can do it, I can do it too. So he literally absorbs the shadows into him, and Gaja transforms into an iron shadow dragon, which we finally get Gaja's 2 elemental change, right here, which was pretty badass. And essentially he beats down this rogue, and the evil presence leaves him. Now, I think I'm led to believe that evil, shadow, that evil presence within Rogue was future Rogue. I think that's what it was, and stuff like that. So yeah. Now, back in the castle, the Wolf Knights show up again. And they start getting in Fairy Tail's way. Now we cut over to the Lox's fight. It looks like we're gonna get a 3-way, but Olga's thinking he can take Jura all by himself, but Jura one-shots him. And then Lox starts his fight with Jura, and then eventually Loxus ends up defeating Jura in a tough brawl, which speaks to Lox's strength. Gray and Juvia, in their fight against Leon and Shelia, they get their win from the standpoint that Leon and Shelia don't work well together, and they're kind of bickering back and forth and stuff like that. Like Shelia's like, stop worrying about her and stuff like that, in reference to Juvia, while Gray and Juvia work pretty well together, even though Gray doesn't like to be around Juvia too much. They use a unison ray to take them out, and they're there. And Urza, using her second origin, which I do like to mention the fact that they have Urza say second origin. She uses her Nakagami armor, which essentially is an armor that consumes a lot of magic power for, high damage. And her fight against Minerva, she uses Nakagami Starlight and utterly just obliterates Minerva. And when you see Urza finally beat Minerva, it feels so damn worth it, man. It feels so good to see that. So other than that, most of all the other guilds are gone. Sting is the only one from Sabretooth left. And this is when we get the infamous moment everybody likes to talk about, where it's the quote-unquote infamous moment where either you stayed along with Fairy Tail or dropped the series. And that is the Sting surrendering moment. Now, let's talk about this. Sting surrendering. You want to know my thoughts on it? Do I love it or do I hate it? And honestly, I'm fine with it. I see no problem with this scene. And the reasoning behind, and this is just my interpretation, my reasoning. You can go watch this YouTuber named Rax the God. He makes a pretty good video of why Sting surrendered. And essentially, this is my own interpretation to the Sting surrendering before anybody gets heated in the comment section. So the thing is, Sting has this determination this newfound determination, this so quote unquote new power to try to save Lecter. But the thing is, he sees that when all the Fairy Tail members are standing before him, injured, battered, bruised, and even Sting makes mention, I could blow these guys over with just one big breath. But the one thing Sting says or sees is the fact that each and every Fairy Tail member stands before him with determination and no fear in their eyes, and they're all willing to fight him, even if they know they're walking into a lose-lose situation. And essentially, from Sting's standpoint, he's like, what the hell is going on here? Why are they not cowering in fear? Why are they not backing down? And he sees this as a way of, like, they're standing tall no matter the cost. And that's because Fairy Tail is standing tall and fighting with determination. They're going to fight with that determination for everybody that suffered in the past. And they have a reasoning behind what they're fighting for. While Sting, on the other side, yes, he's fighting for Lecter, but he really hasn't really done that. You can say he took the approach of, why fight now? Because if you remember back to the Chariots game, he was in a lose-lose situation where he saw Natsu and Gajo continue the game and finish the game, even though riding on a device that gives them motion sickness, doesn't help them. We saw Sting is like on that same thing, he just backed out. And we saw that if the cards don't play right for Sabretooth, they just give up. As opposed to Fairy Tail, they stand tall. Even if they are going to die, they will continue to fight for what they believe in. And Sting sees this, and along with the fact that, going up against his idols, getting a victory against them all hurt, he feels like this wouldn't be a win he would earn. Quote, a win he would earn. Because Sting's character was the fact that he was an egotistical type of guy, a very cocky guy that says, I can beat everybody at their A game and stuff like that. And Sting's looking at this, and he's kind of overwhelmed by this, of their determination, their will to win, and the fact that they're not going to give up. And Sting's like, I can't fight them because I don't have that. If I was in their shoes, I would have just given up. And that's why he really surrendered, because he sees Fairy Tail's determination, the fact of what they're fighting for some people that they care about for a reason, and they're not going to back down out of it and look like sissies about it. Sting, he has yet to understand that, and because of it, when he finally realizes that all that egotisticalness, all that selfishness, all that cockiness, that goes away from him, and he actually humbles himself. And he's like, I can't do this. Their will is too strong for me to continue. And that's how I took it. Maybe I'm looking a little bit into too much of things. And again, you don't have to agree with what I said. I don't care. If you don't agree in my statement of why you think Sting's rare, you want to rip it apart, fine. But I don't think this story point is as bad as everybody makes it seem to be. Because guess what? If you were put in the same position and you won and you attacked them and won, I don't think you would feel very justified, and I don't think you would feel like the win would feel good. Like, you would probably be like, that win is great. I'm happy that I won, but it doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel good. I essentially beat up the scraps that my comrades left for me, and I just stood here, sitting down, waiting for them to come to me. That's another thing I forgot to mention. Literally, they fought their own individual battles. Sting had his own Sabretooth members fight those battles. And essentially, he's getting the scraps of damage left from his friends to win. And that's another reason why Sting wouldn't feel like this fight, if he were to beat them all up and win, he wouldn't feel like winning the games for Sabretooth would have not been worth it for him, because I'm just picking up the scraps left by my comrades. It's not an earned victory, and their determination, their will. And they know I could probably beat them, but they're still going to stand tall. And that's really why Sting surrendered. And again, like I said, I'm not mad at this point, honestly. It makes when you listen to a fairy tale fan standpoint of why Sting ultimately surrendered, it makes a lot of sense, and it actually, makes it work. You know what? That point isn't as bad as I thought it was. I think people were kind of reading into the lines a little bit too much because they were expecting a huge out brawl and stuff like that. And also, one last thing I want to mention. Hisui said that the winner of the Grand Magic Games would win it in a way that was unexpected. Fairy Tail won the Grand Magic Games. That was the one team that nobody thought would win the Grand Magic Game from the start. And two, they won it in a way that nobody saw coming. Who would have ever thought that the one full-powered, 100% ready-to-go Sabretooth member that didn't do anything against a Fairy Tail team who are battered, bruised, and hurt, just surrender and give up like that and lose? No one would have saw that coming. So in terms of the story, it makes sense. So again, I don't understand why you people are pissed. People try to come up with these BS excuses that Fairy Tail is bad. I'm not saying Fairy Tail isn't bad here and there. There are some bad story points, and I'm not saying Fairy Tail's perfect. But if we're going to flat out say, oh, this moment's stupid. What? They literally say the winner of the Grand Magic Games is going to win in a way that no one would expect. I think this is a way that no one would expect, right? That's what I'm talking about. People have these initial thoughts when they read that chapter or they saw that episode, and they're like, fuck this, I'm getting out of here. Turn my freaking TV off. But they didn't look into it why Sting ultimately gave up, because all they care about is fights. That's all they care about. They don't look into the lines of things. And I'm telling you, if a Fairy Tail hater goes back and rewatches it and gets the opinion of the fact of an open mind and saying, okay, that makes more sense now, instead of just rationally thinking this is terrible, guess what? You wouldn't be hating the series as much. I'm not saying you can't hate the series. If you didn't like it, you didn't like it. I'm not going to blame you if you didn't like it. That's your opinion. You just didn't enjoy it. Fine. More power to you. But don't act like it's the worst thing created on Earth. It's the worst anime of all time. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. I've seen worse animes than Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail, I said it again, I'll say it before, yada, yada, yada. Fairy Tail is by no means perfect. It has its problems. I think Fairy Tail is a solid series that gets too much hate from a community of haters with this series because they tell it to other fans, don't watch Fairy Tail, it sucks. And when they do watch it, they have those thoughts of Fairy Tail sucks, I'm not going to care much about it, and that's when they hate it. So they get to that moment, they're like, they're right, this does suck, instead of looking too much into the damn scene. Sometimes you have to look philosophy-wise into why these characters do the actions that they're doing it for. Anyways, let's move on. And we get to the badass parts of the Grand Magic Games arc and stuff like that. So Fairy Tail wins the Grand Magic Games, and that's it. Anyways, Hisui sees this. She's already ready on her way to go open the gate. Now, when Natsu's gang is still fighting, we see the Royal Guards and the Wolf Knights get taken down into the shadows. And we find out, well, guess what? There's another person from the future and everything. And essentially, we find out that the next other person, that the other person from the future is Future Rogue, and stuff like that, and things like that. And when Arceus brings up to the point, finally talking to Hisui, like, I heard this plan, she told me everything, and it's everything that she foreshadowed and stuff like that. And Hisui's like, the person I talked to was a man. And that's when we find out that it's Future Rogue. And essentially, Future Rogue says, in order to save the world, they have to use the Eclipse Gate to open the Eclipse Gate, because there's this weapon called the Eclipse Cannon in it, and doing it will get rid of the dragons. He says in his timeline that there's 10% human life left in a world ruled by dragons. Also, he says the Eclipse Gate was severely weakened, and he also makes mention that there's somebody that prevents the gates from being open and keeps it closed, and he blames it on Lucy. Future Rogue goes in to attack Lucy, but Future Lucy gets in the way of stopping that, and she ends up dying. And you get a very emotional scene where you have Future Lucy dying, even though it's not their Lucy. It's still Lucy nevertheless. Natsu's enraged and pissed off by this. He starts fighting Future Rogue, and the others get away. Eventually, we see in this fight, Future Rogue, Natsu tries to get the better of Future Rogue, but Future Rogue is too strong for him. And eventually, we find out that Rogue is actually a white shadow dragon. We find out in his timeline, he killed Sting, and he absorbed his power and everything. But eventually, it comes to the point where Natsu is defeated. Ultra shows up to save him, and it looks like he's getting pulled into the shadow, but thanks to Ultra, she gets pulled out. Now, King Fiore, with everything, all the knowledge she knows, is asking the other guilds around to say, hey, we're going to be attacked by 10,000 dragons. We're going to use this thing called the Eclipse Cannon to be able to take out some of them, but not all of them will be destroyed. We're going to need your help, your guild's helps, to take the rest of them down. And obviously the guild go on. Now, Sabretooth, we see them now that they're more humble, more proactive, more caring. They make a mention that Minerva's not here and stuff like that. Now, Jalal talks to Lahar and Doran Bolt and says he has a plan. Now, what is it? Lucy, Wendy, and the Exceeds meet up with Hisui, and essentially they say that future Lucy's dead because that's what Arcade brings up. And apparently Lucy's like, yeah, this other guy from the future is blaming me that I'm going to close the gate. And essentially, midnight hits. It's July 7th, which is the foreshadowed day. They start to open up the gate. And then Lucy starts saying to close the gate. And by then, it's already too late because then all of a sudden, which was a plot twist, especially when I saw it for the first time, we see legit dragons start walking out of the freaking gate. And we find out that Future Rogue lied all this time. He wanted the gate to be open so then the dragons can come through the gate and then ravage all hell on Earth. And stuff like that. And that's when Lucy says, listen, there is no such thing as an Eclipse Cannon. That's why we need to close it. And stuff like that. Essentially, Lucy's like, this device can only connect to a different point in time. She goes on to say that this connects to over 400 years ago when dragons ruled Fiore. She also says that when she had Crux analyze the gate, she was told that it was combined with celestial spirit magic and with the writings from the Book of Zareth to work. Essentially, thanks to the lunar eclipse, is affecting the magic, which essentially connects the gate to those 400 years back in the past. And the dragons are coming through. Now, Lucy's trying to close the gate with all her might, but eventually comes to the point where, with Yukino's help, they both close the gate with the 12 Zodiac spirits. There's only 7 dragons that come out of the gate in their own different shapes and sizes. And essentially, this is when things get freaking insane, from freaking crazy, from crazy to insanity. And I loved every single one of it and stuff like that. Now, eventually, we see everyone trying to fight the dragons, but no regular wizard is affecting the dragons or doing any damage and stuff like that. Eventually, Future Rogue sees Natsu again. They start fighting again. Future Rogue's shocked that Natsu's still alive, and Natsu's like, well, guess what? I'm still going to be fighting regardless and everything. And we find out the reason why Rogue is doing all this is so he can create a strong enough dragon army to be able to take down Acnologia. We also find out that the way of how he's controlling the dragons is by using Dragon Tamer magic. And that's how he's able to control them and everything and stuff like that. We also find out Sabretooth, Twin Dragons, Sting, and Rogue, they didn't particularly kill their dragons. Well, they killed them, but really in a way where they try to lessen how cool it sounds. Essentially, what really happened is the fact that in order for both of them to get stronger, and even in Rogue's case for Skidrum, essentially they kill their dragons to get stronger and stuff like that. Now Skidrim, which is Rogue's dragon, he was sick and Skidrim wanted Rogue to kill him, but mostly it's because so they can get stronger. Now Natsu starts attacking the dragon, and the dragon that he's fighting on with Rogue, or with future Rogue, which is Mother Glare. And essentially he screams out to everybody saying, guys, guess what? There's dragons here? Well, guess what, guys? There's 7 dragons, and there's 7 dragon slayers of us out here. So let's take this fight to the dragons and let's do what we're built up to do. And that's let's slay some damn dragons. And when I was watching this for the first time, I was like, oh, yeah, let's go. We're finally going to see the dragon slayers slay some damn dragons and do what they were always born to do. And this part gets fucking epic. I'm telling you, man. The back half, when you get into Dragon's Fall and the Dragon King Festival shit going on, this stuff is epic, man. I'm telling you. I'm losing my seats in my first watch. Now, in my second rewatch, I'm loving all this. And I'm just like, this shit is dope. This shit is dope. And everything. Now, Future Rogue is like 7 dragon slayers. You don't have 7 dragon slayers. But we find out Jalal's plan was to tell Lahar and Dornbolt, release Cobra, bring him to the battle, help defeat the dragon. At least help him, defeat one of the dragons in this case. So Cobra returns to the show. Now, if you're reading the manga, you haven't seen Cobra since the Arashi on Sei's arc. You watch the anime, you just recently saw him from the Key to the Starry Sky arc and everything. And Cobra comes off like a badass, and everything and stuff like that. We do see Kinana see like, oh, Eric's here and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool and everything. Now, the dragon Rogue is on, which is Mother Glare. She starts laying these like smaller dragon eggs, and mostly that's what the regular guild people fight. They fight the smaller dragons, but they just keep coming and stuff like that. Draconis is fighting. Wendy, a few other dragons are fighting and stuff like that. Now, eventually, at some point, after being tossed away, Lucy, essentially, after running into Natsu, finds her future diary, and she finds an interesting fact. Now, Urza is about to get killed by the ground, dragons, and Jalal saves her, but Miliana sees this, and stuff like that. Now, Natsu gets involved in a fight with Atlas Flame, essentially because Natsu knows Igneal and Atlas Flame knew Igneal. Essentially, they work together to try to stop Future Rogue and Mother Glare, and they start fighting. Now, King Fiore, he's like, nothing's ever going to be the same again and everything. So, yeah, now, Rogue is fighting this one dragon who's telling Rogue, like, you did all this, Rogue. Just give in to the shadows. Give in to your hatred. This is going to be you. And Rogue's like, no, it can't be. And stuff like that. But eventually, we see Sting show up, and Sting's like, and Rogue's like, he's going to be the guy behind me that's always going to have my back. Now, Ultir, she's looking at Rogue through this whole, stuff. And after she saved Natsu, we find, Ultir comes to the plan, like, maybe we should kill present-day Rogue so then future Rogue doesn't exist anymore and can't do this plan. But Natsu's like, no, we can't kill this Rogue because he hasn't done anything and he's just an innocent dude. Now, cutting back to the Miliana stuff with Urza and Jalal. Miliana is very pissed that Urza is, like, so forgiving of Jalal, because even Urza's like, Miliana, listen, I know Jalal did all these bad things, but you have to forgive him. And Miliana's like, how can I forgive somebody who killed Simon? And eventually we see Ultir walk up, and she's like, don't blame Jalal, blame me. I freaking possessed him. I had control over him to make him do the evil things he did to you guys and stuff like that. And essentially, Ultir walks off by saying, look, if you want to take your anger out on me, I'll give you a shot. And we see Kagura on the side. She was there looking at this, like looking like she was probably going to kill Jalal herself, hear all this whole conversation. And she's just kind of conflicted at that point in time there, and stuff like that. And as Ultir is walking away, he's kind of thinking to herself, well, the first thing that came into my head was the fact that I wanted to kill Rogue. I guess I'm always going to be the same killer I've always been and stuff like that, and my life is meaningless. And this is when we get the moment in this arc, in the Grand Magic Games arc, where things go from bad to worse. And essentially, we see, starting off first with Gray, in order to protect Juvia, literally gets a hole blown through him multiple times, and then a hole just to bring up the fact that he's dead. he gets a hole blown, he gets a laser beam shot through his head, and he's dead. And you see over time in this battle, Fairy Tail members and other people in the fight start dying. Loxus and Wendy die. Gajil gets impaled and dies. Makao and his group dies. Lucy dies by taking the wrong turn. You know, it's just all hell on earth. And, you know, that's the point of losing and stuff like that. Eventually, Ultra's like, remembers a time when she learned this magic that can change back time. And she's going to use this magic to change back time to hopefully before the Eclipse Gate was open and everything. So then, guess what? She can try to save the world. The only cost of using the spell is the user's remaining lifespan. She does it, and when she sees the time, she sees the clock, she sees it only reverted back to 1 minute. And she thinks that 1 minute was completely worthless, and she lost the battle. But no, that one moment she gifted everybody helped them, because after her doing the spell, eventually everybody sees visions of their future self dying in all those predicaments, which helps them see the future and prevents them all from dying, where they either take a different route or do something different to save their lives. For example, Lucy doesn't go the way where she gets caught by the ground dragons. She ends up taking the other way, going the other direction, so she doesn't get caught. Eventually, she gets to the castle grounds. She tells Hisui and the others, listen, the one way we can save the world and save everybody and end this madness is if we destroy the Eclipse Gate. If we do that, it can get rid of Future Rogue, because Future Rogue won't have something that you go to use in the future to go back in time and do this whole Dragon King festival and this evil plot. So Lucian's Yukino tried to use her celestial use her celestial magic, the celestial spirits, to take it out, but it doesn't work. But eventually, after Natsu fighting with Future Rogue, essentially talks about in their fight, Natsu says, it doesn't matter. I'm going to always fight for my future so I can live on tomorrow and have even a better tomorrow, and stuff like that. And you're not going to do anything to take that future away from us. So Natsu gears up. I'm guessing he doesn't announce the move, but I'm guessing it's a Fire Dragon Sword Horn. And he literally takes Mother Glare and Future Rogue, smashes them into the Eclipse Gate, destroys the Eclipse Gate. Because of the Eclipse Gate being destroyed, all the dragons that were attacking vanishes and goes back to their original time. Future Rogue, as he's going away, tells Natsu that somebody is going to kill Froge, and that's what makes Rogue go bad and turn evil and stuff like that, and that they're going to die in a year. So we get that story point brought up of the fact that Rogue could potentially be an antagonist again, and we have to watch out for Froge and stuff like that. We see the diary go away and Future Lucy, her body go away, and we see her finally reawaken back into her own timeline. What I'm guessing is the afterlife, where she sees her fairy tale friends, including Natsu and Happy, where they go, enjoy more journeys together, I'm guessing, in the afterlife. It was a very hard-hitting, emotional scene. Definitely gets me to almost tearing up, because when I see that, I know when I saw that scene in my second rewatch, I almost cried, because it's like, even though she's going to be with her friends again in the afterlife, she never really did get those adventures she wanted to enjoy. Because that's the one thing that we see that Future Lucy wanted. She wanted to have more journeys, more adventures with her friends. And she never got that. And it really does hit you hard when you see that scene where it's just this field of just lush plains and everything. And you just see Natsu, Lucy like, hey, Lucy, come over here and show up and everything. And you're just like, she can finally rest in peace. And it's very sad. It's very sad. Even now, it's starting to get my eyes to water. So, yeah, you get a Nalu moment where Lucy thanks Natsu for everything he did. Very beautiful Nalu moment. It reminds me of the Nalu moment, funnily enough, in Phoenix Priestess, where the two embrace and they have a hug after this whole situation and stuff like that. And the world is saved. Fiore is saved. The Kingdom of Fiore is saved. The Dragon King Festival is over. Now the epilogue of the Grand Magic Games arc is King Fiore threw a party for all the guilds that participated in the Grand Magic Games. You get lovely moments. Levy writes down something where, you have Gaju come up on her and, essentially kind of just, well, I guess you can say Levy kind of flirts with him and kind of expresses his feelings, saying, I was worried about you and stuff like that, and I'm happy that you're still alive and everything. So that's, again, another Gali reference here. We see Urza, Miliana, and Kagura finally put aside their differences because Miliana's like, can I be your sister? And I'm like, oh, that's so adorable, and everything. Yukino, she's finally welcomed back into Sabretooth because Sting is now the new master, essentially. And he's like, listen, we're going to operate Sabretooth in a different way where we treasure our guildmates as family and friends and stuff like that. We find out that actually Princess Hisui knew Jude Hartfilia and was good friends with him. So that creates the dynamic that Lucy and Princess Hisui are besties, which is pretty cool and stuff like that. She also apologizes for everything that she caused Lucy and everything. So, yeah. Also, we see that Nasu becomes, or Nasu takes the king of the ground and says, oh, and everything. That episode was really cool, really fun. It was a nice way to end the arc off. Again, continue the epilogue. We see this old lady get featured enough, and Nasu, Lucy, Gray, Urza, and Wendy, all on the way heading back to Magnolia, eventually Gray sees the old lady. But first, Jalal and Ultir wonder where Ultir is at, but they actually talk to Dorenbolt. Now, Dorenbolt actually tells Jalal and Ultir of the fact that what he did is so there was no craziness that happens. It's the fact that he erased all the memories of the Magic Council. That includes Lahar, because if after this incident, Lahar came back and the other Magic Council members came back and saw what happened with the Eclipse Gate, since it has ties to the Book of Zareth, literally it would have put the kingdom in fluctuation and probably would have lost Kisui and King Fiore their positions as king. And there could have been like a whole sort of revolution going against the king for what happened. So we erased the Magic Council members so nothing is bringed up. Jalal asked about Cobra, and Dorenbolt says, well, Cobra came back in peacefully because he didn't defeat a dragon, which is funny enough. After the whole Dragon King Festival, Mavis, it actually says, like, we had 7 dragon slayers against 7 dragons, and not one dragon slayer defeated a dragon, which is, again, pretty damn concerning. And it also goes to show you how strong dragons are in the fairy tale world, that they're no joke, that they are creatures that you do not want to tangle with, and stuff like that. So, again, like I said, with Cobra, because he felt like, it wasn't worth it. I couldn't even kill a dragon, so what's the point in being free? I'm going back to jail. But he tells Dorenbolt that, oh yeah, I heard that the gates of the netherworld are opening, which essentially is a hint that after Dorenbolt leaves, because Dorenbolt's like, I don't know what that means or anything, but Jalal and Meridi Jalal and Melody essentially know that that's the reference to Tartaros coming soon, which in the manga, after the Grand Magic Games arc, you jump right into the Tartaros arc. Like I said, for the anime, it takes a while for you to get to the Tartaros arc, and you have to watch the abomination of the Eclipse Celestial Spirits arc before you get to the Tartaros arc, and stuff like that. But that hints at the Tartaros guild, the Tartaros arc coming soon, and stuff like that. But they get a letter, but Jalal and Ultir, come across the old lady we see, and she gives them a letter from Ultir saying that she used the magic to turn back time to save them all, but at the cost of her life. And we see Gray kind of a little bit down. Wendy talks to him, and he's like, I just have this feeling that something crazy happened. And it feels like on the same type of, level of Ur's sacrifice. And then that's when Gray, out of the carriage, they're riding back to Magnolia, sees, obviously, an older Ultir. She kind of just waves him off saying, don't come back for me. And she starts smiling. And Gray, seeing this, essentially her Ultir smiling is her finally realizing for after all she's done, she can finally have the happiness she wants to have. And Gray's seeing this and he's getting very damn emotional. Again, another emotional scene. Because he's like, to him, he's like, another member of Urza's family protected me, saved my life for me to live on. And it hits Gray super hard because it's another member of his mentor's, person. I've always said Ultir is like an older sister to him. I never saw Ultir as like a mother to Gray. I only saw Ultir as a mother to Melody. I always saw Ultir as an older sister to Gray that would look out for Gray. And here that's what she did, like what an older sister would do for their younger brother, or an older sibling, what they would do for their younger sibling. Look out for them. And Gray gets very emotional because he's like, God damn it, why does somebody in my life that means a lot to me have to sacrifice their life for me again? And it really hits you hard. It really hits you hard. And you really feel bad for Gray. And you see when they get back to Magnolia, Gray still has that kind of on his mind. And Juvia's like, hey, listen, I know you're upset about something. I don't know. That's not my place to know, but at least look happy for your friends. Obviously, that makes Gray obviously happier. And that's why I say when I'll get to the Emperor's Empire arc, with everybody that Gray loses in his life that means a lot to him, Juvia is that one person that has always been there for him from beginning to end. And that's the person where by the time we see one of your quest, he has feelings for her, and he essentially likes her romantically, because really Juvia is that one person out of all the people in his circle that he truly does care and love and has an impact on his life. Juvia is the one person that means a lot to him because she's always been there. Even though she annoys him from time to time, he liked that company from her. And that's when we get to Albert's Empire arc. I'll speak even more about that when she supposedly dies. Which, speaking of that, that's an arc where a lot of people supposedly dies. So yeah. And yeah, that's kind of where the arc ends. The fairy tale goes back to Magnolia. The people of Magnolia celebrate their win in the Grand Magic Games, and they have a new guild, remastered guild hall and stuff like that. And things go back to normal till, in the case of the manga, the Tardos arc, and in the anime, the Eclipse Celestial Spirits arc. And that's it for the Grand Magic Games arc, and that's it. So my thoughts on the Grand Magic Games arc? Grand Magic Games arc, guys, listen, is one of the best fairy tale arcs. It's a top 3 fairy tale arc. And the reason why is it was so good. The story was really damn good. And then the moments even helped better. The freaking, future Lucy going back to her timeline, the Ultir sacrifice, the Ultir sacrifice, the Sting moment, the Sting surrendering moment, the Nakagami Starlight, Natsu overcoming the twin dragons, all, Elfman beating Bacchus, all these great moments in the Grand Magic Games arc was great. And, before I watched this video, I watched somebody do an arc review of this, and he made the mention of the fact that this arc really shows that there is no singular main character like in Natsu and Lucy. This is all about the guild because the guild collectively worked together to win the Grand Magic Games as a whole. And they gave each member of the guild who participated a moment for them. Yes, I wasn't happy about the Raventail moment, the Raventail stuff. But I'm not going to lie and say the moment was badass when Loxus takes them all down. Even though I don't like the fact where they take Raventail and stuff like that. But, this arc had so many great moments to where you just sit back and you're like, this is a great arc. And it's one of the better arcs. Again, this arc is not perfect. It has its fair share of problems. I will admit that. Maybe you can point out more problems you had with this arc than I did. Because other than that Raventail thing, I really had no problems with this arc, and I enjoyed this arc. And again, I've said it in my rankings, I love Tartaros. Tartaros is definitely up there as one of my favorite arcs. Again, if not my favorite arc of the series, but if I rewatch it again, it probably will go down. But the Grand Magic Games is very hard for me because it's a very good arc, and it's definitely a close second. I like the fact that they brought the time stuff. It's kind of confusing in the fairy tale time compared to other timelines. The thing is, it's different than, like, say, Dragon Ball Z, because when you destroy something, it affects the future. It's different, and stuff like that. But I like that they brought some case of time travel, even though it's pretty still whack confusing. But what do I know? Whenever you bring time travel into a story, it gets confusing. I love the main story of how it came from just the Grand Magic Games of fairy tale, trying to become the best guild in Fiore. And yes, it cuts in a little bit into it in the second half of the arc. And then it turns into, we need to save the world before our world turns into apocalypse, and we fight for our future. And I really did enjoy this moment. There's a lot of moments where it can get you to tear up and cry. And it's just good. It's just good. I love the Grand Magic Games arc. This is an arc that I would and I could watch 20 times over and over and over and over again. It's that good of an arc. And to the people who hate this arc, I don't know what they're seeing. But again, like I said, you're entitled to your own opinion. But I love the Grand Magic Games arc. I enjoyed talking the Grand Magic Games arc with you guys the past two videos. Finally, in my rewatch and making my re-reviews of each arc, I found a new appreciation for the Grand Magic Games arc, which, again, I love it more than anything. Funny enough, you can even play the Grand Magic Games arc in the Fairy Tail video game, and stuff like that. But definitely a great arc. I definitely loved it, and I definitely love talking about this arc, not only part 1, but part 2 with you guys. Anyways, if you guys like the video, leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts on the Grand Magic Games arc as a whole. I thought it was great. I think both parts complement each other great. So yeah. So put in the comment section your thoughts on the Grand Magic Games arc as a whole. Is it up there in one of your favorite fairy tale arcs? And do you not like it? Or do you not like it? Again, hit that subscribe button if you want to get more fairy tale arc reviews going forward, as well as when you hit that subscribe button, make sure you're up to date with whatever I upload to the channel. Other than that, that's it. So next time we come back for fairy tale arc reviews next Monday, I will not be talking about the Eclipse Celestial Spirits arc. I will, but that's going to be next Monday. Not next Monday. That's going to be Monday in 2 weeks. Next Monday, I'm actually going to be talking about the first fairy tale movie, and that is fairy tale movie number 1, Phoenix Priestess. Yes, I figured I'd just throw the movies in this whole type of thing, in this whole arc review. I think it's kind of perfect that I put it here. So I'm going to put it here. Technically, the movie fits, canonically, it fits in the timeline after the Tenro Island arc. So yeah, but too late. But next week, I will be talking about the Phoenix Priestess movie. Then after that will be me talking about the Eclipse Celestial Spirits arc. Then the week after that will be the Sun Village arc. Then the next 2 weeks after the Sun Village arc video will be the 2-part Tartaros arc review. Then the Fairy Tail Zero arc review after that. Then the Avatar arc. Then I will be reviewing Dragon Cry. And lastly, I will have a 2-part videos to close up my Fairy Tail arc reviews discussing the Alvarez Empire arc. Other than that, guys, you got a boatload of Fairy Tail arc reviews coming. I'm watching Fairy Tail as fast as I can to get through it so I can dish out these videos. Most of my videos I've made for already are like pre-recorded. So not really, but other than that, that's just kind of it. But other than that, I'm gonna get out of here, guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night when I'm trying out this video. Until then, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next Fairy Tail arc review, and I'll see you guys next Monday for my review of Fairy Tail the movie, Phoenix Priestess. Peace. Okay. Look. Sorry. I know I said I was going to end the video off, but there was one more thing I forgot to mention for my end of the Grand Magic Games arc review, and that was the whole notion of the Zareth thing at the end. Essentially, that little creature from Raventail, that was actually one of Zareth's little minions sent from Zareth. And he was there. And he goes back to Zareth and everything. Now, the thing is, what happens is, you know, eventually he runs to Zareth, and we see the confrontation between Zareth and Mavis. Now, essentially, Zareth essentially says, even though, like, look, I can't see you or hear you, I know you're there, and stuff like that. Now, he goes on to say, he goes on to bring up about past the he goes on to tell Mavis about the past 7 years, about all the atrocities he's seen in his life and everything. And then he goes on to mention that what the humans here in the fairy tale world are doing are not necessarily what are not, I guess you can say they're not living the way, you know, that he thought they should be living. And then essentially says, those humans are already going to be dead. Essentially, he says, like, essentially Mavis kind of, you know, kind of tells him, like, why are you rejecting, like, why are, like, humans aren't rejecting this world? And Zareth's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you might say they're not, but I'm rejecting this world and everything. Essentially, he says that, listen, I'm going to kill everyone and everybody's dying. Not one man, not one woman, not one child. They're all dying and I'm going to annihilate them. Which is essentially the foreshadowing to Zareth eventually doing the Alvarez Empire arc, which is just a whole thing there and everything. And Mavis essentially says, in response to that statement, he's like, well, Fairy Tail will be there to stop you and everything. And they just kind of look at each other. And then essentially Zareth just says in his head, or he just looks up and he's like, well, Natsu, the next time we meet, our battle is very near approaching each other. Again, essentially foreshadowing the events that are going to take place in the Alvarez Empire arc. Funny enough, this is only like a few days after I recorded this video. So literally I was watching a filler episode after the Grand Magic Games, and I really don't like how they put some of the parts, like this part I was talking to you about Mavis and Zareth, about the foreshadowing to the Alvarez Empire arc. They put that in a completely different filler episode where it's like Lucy and the others were catching some stupid fish mole thing. And it was at the end of that episode. Totally passed me by. Thank God I haven't fully edited out my video yet, and I just realized this at the nick of time. But that's what I wanted to say. That was just a quick foreshadowing moment to Zareth's ultimate attack on Fiore when he leads the Alvarez Empire on it. Other than that, that's it. So I'm going to get over, guys. I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'll see you guys Monday for the Phoenix Priestess movie review. Till then, guys, I'll catch you guys later. Peace.